It was supposed to be a fun and relaxing winter getaway, a much-needed escape from the routine of everyday life. Sarah Thompson, a 34-year-old single mother, had planned the ski trip for months. She wanted to give her 9-year-old daughter, Emily, a magical experience in the snow before school picked up again. They had chosen Crystal Ridge, a serene and less crowded ski resort nestled deep in the mountains, known more to locals than tourists. On the morning of their disappearance, the weather had been clear, the slopes freshly powdered, and Sarah seemed in high spirits as she chatted with fellow vacationers in the lodge. Witnesses later recalled seeing the pair board the ski lift around 10 a.m., bundled warmly and laughing together. But by nightfall, when they hadn't returned to their cabin or checked in with staff, concern began to stir. At first, no one panicked. It wasn't unusual for skiers to lose track of time or explore off-trail routes. But as the temperature dropped and darkness cloaked the resort, calls to their cell phones went unanswered. Resort staff alerted Mountain Patrol, who began a preliminary search that evening. The next morning, full-scale efforts were launched. Snowmobiles, helicopters, trained dogs, and dozens of volunteers combed the area. But there was no trace of Sarah or Emily, no ski tracks, no clothing, no gear, nothing. It was as if the mountain had simply swallowed them whole. In the days that followed, national news outlets picked up the story. The image of Sarah and Emily, smiling, wrapped in scarves, spread across the country. People were gripped by the mystery. How could a mother and daughter vanish without a single clue? Despite intense efforts, the trail went cold. The winter snow kept its secret, and the mountain remained silent. As the hours turned into days, hope slowly began to wane. Search crews pushed forward despite worsening weather conditions. Snowstorms rolled through the mountains, burying any possible traces of the missing mother and daughter. Helicopters scanned the treetops and ridgelines, while ground teams braved dangerous terrain and plummeting temperatures, calling out Sarah and Emily's names into the bitter wind. The resort was temporarily shut down, and a command post was established at the lodge. Volunteers, some who had never even met the Thompsons, joined the search, driven by empathy and the haunting possibility that the pair might still be alive, waiting to be found. But day after day, the efforts yielded nothing. Dogs trained to detect human scent found no leads. The ski lift operator, who remembered seeing them ride up, was questioned again and again, but had nothing new to offer. Investigators reviewed hours of security footage and interviewed everyone staying at the resort during that time. No one had seen Sarah or Emily after they disappeared onto the mountain. Their cabin remained untouched. Their luggage still sat beside the bed, their winter clothes neatly arranged, suggesting they had expected to return that evening. The case began to confound even the most seasoned search and rescue personnel. After 2 weeks, with temperatures dropping well below freezing and the terrain becoming increasingly hazardous, the official search was scaled back. Authorities admitted they had exhausted all known options. News coverage began to fade, and with it, the public's attention. Occasionally, updates would surface, new tip, possible sighting, but they led nowhere. Rumors spread. Maybe they had staged their disappearance, maybe it was foul play. But the family knew better. Sarah wouldn't leave without a word, and Emily was far too young to survive alone. Still, no answers came. The mountain had offered nothing but silence, and the world slowly moved on. The silence left in the wake of the disappearance slowly turned into a haunting void filled with speculation and whispers. As the months passed with no new developments, theories began to swirl among the public and online forums. Some suggested that Sarah had deliberately vanished, that perhaps she had been fleeing something, debt, a custody battle, or a troubled past that no one knew about. Others theorized that a stranger had lured them off the main trail, leading to a more sinister fate. Still, there were those who held on to hope, believing the pair had simply gotten lost and were surviving somewhere in the wilderness, waiting for rescue. The lack of any concrete evidence only fueled the speculation. The media, once relentless in covering the story, gradually moved on to fresher tragedies and headlines. The search, now reduced to periodic patrols and satellite scans, turned into more of a formality than an active effort. For the Thompson family, the world seemed to be moving on too quickly. Sarah's parents made tearful appearances on local news channels, pleading with anyone who might know something to come forward. Emily's father, who had been separated from Sarah for years, was briefly investigated and later cleared, but remained under the shadow of suspicion in the public eye. Online, amateur sleuths dissected every aspect of the case, from the layout of the ski resort to weather patterns on the day of the disappearance. Theories ranged from plausible to outlandish, some even claiming the pair had been taken by a secretive mountain cult or lost in a hidden cave system. But with no physical evidence, no gear, no bodies, not even a single glove left behind, the case became a ghost story, one that people told each other in hushed tones when talking about the dangers of venturing off trail. What had begun as a simple ski vacation was now a growing mystery embedded in local legend. The resort's reputation took a quiet hit, some regulars stopped coming, uneasy about the place where two lives had vanished so completely. But for those closest to Sarah and Emily, the mystery wasn't just unsettling, it was unbearable. Not knowing was a slow and constant torment, and as each season passed, the question remained painfully the same: how could they just disappear? For Sarah and Emily's family, the passing years did nothing to ease the pain. In fact, each birthday, each holiday, each winter that returned with falling snow only sharpened the ache of their absence. Sarah's mother, Linda, refused to move Sarah's belongings from her childhood room, keeping the shelves exactly as her daughter had left them before becoming a mother herself. Emily's drawings still hung on the refrigerator, faded now, the paper curling at the corners but untouched. Every photo of the smiling little girl felt like a frozen moment from a life that had been cruelly cut off. Despite the silence and the lack of evidence, the family refused to give up. Linda and her husband Richard hired private investigators, consulted psychics, and reached out to wilderness experts. Some charged money and delivered nothing. Others offered glimmers of hope that quickly faded into dead ends. Every year, on the anniversary of their disappearance, the family returned to the resort, holding a candlelight vigil at the base of the slopes. A few locals always joined, bowing their heads respectfully, even if they believed the pair were long gone. For Linda and Richard, it was never about giving up, it was about honoring the idea that, somewhere, their daughter and granddaughter might still be waiting. Emily's father, Jason, had once been the subject of intense public suspicion. The scrutiny almost broke him. But over time, he too joined the quiet determination of the Thompsons, clinging to the possibility that Emily was out there. He started a foundation to support searches for missing people in wilderness areas, channeling his grief into something that might help others. Yet, behind every interview and fundraiser, there was still the ghost of a little girl he once kissed goodnight. Friends drifted away. Life, as it inevitably does, moved forward for most people. But for the Thompsons, time had fractured on that winter day. They lived in a limbo of unanswered questions and what-ifs. Every news story of someone found alive after years in the wild reignited their fragile hope. Every unclaimed hiker's remains discovered elsewhere sent a shiver through them, wondering if this time it was Sarah and Emily. But each time, it wasn't. And so the family waited. Not because they were naive, but because letting go would mean accepting something they simply couldn't bring themselves to believe, that the ones they loved most had vanished into nothing. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Liam Parker, an experienced hiker and wildlife photographer, set out on a remote trail far beyond the boundaries of the marked paths near Crystal Ridge. He had been exploring the region for years but had recently taken a keen interest in lesser-known routes, searching for untouched landscapes and the perfect shot. Equipped with a topographic map, a drone, and supplies for a multi-day solo trek, he ventured deep into the wilderness, into areas where few people had walked in decades, if ever. The forest around him was quiet, the leaves golden and crunching beneath his boots. He hadn't planned to find anything other than beauty. But what he stumbled upon would shake the quiet mountain community, and the entire nation, to its core. 3 days into his hike, while scanning the terrain with his drone from a high ridge, he noticed something strange nestled in a densely wooded ravine, an unnatural indentation in the earth, almost like the remnants of a structure long since collapsed. Intrigued, he marked the coordinates and made his way down the steep slope, careful not to disturb the brittle branches and uneven ground. The closer he got, the more his instincts told him something wasn't right. At the base of the slope, partially buried by years of debris, brush, and snowmelt sediment, he found what appeared to be the remains of a rudimentary shelter: wooden planks, old tarps, and shredded clothing tangled among roots and rock. Liam froze. There was something somber, heavy, about the air. As he stepped cautiously inside the remnants, he saw what looked like a weathered backpack and an old ski jacket still bearing a faded pink pattern. He recognized the jacket, not personally, but from the photos that had once plastered every news outlet years ago. Heart pounding, he backed away and called authorities with trembling fingers. He didn't touch anything, didn't move a single item. He knew this was something far more than just an old campsite. When search and rescue teams arrived the next morning, guided by Liam, they quickly confirmed the unthinkable. Human remains, partially preserved by the cold, lay within the debris. One was clearly adult-sized, the other small, tragically small. Alongside them were a child's stuffed toy, water-damaged notebooks, and personal effects that matched the description of the long-missing Thompsons. After 7 long years of silence and sorrow, the mountain had finally whispered back. As the forensics team carefully worked their way through the collapsed shelter, silence hung over the site like a shroud. The discovery had drawn not just authorities, but also members of the media, who camped at the trailhead, waiting for official confirmation. Deep in the forest, searchers moved with reverence, aware that they were stepping into what had been the final refuge of 2 lost lives. Among the tangled branches and weather-worn fabric, they uncovered objects that had once seemed so ordinary. Now they were sacred remnants of a mother and child's final days. A pair of children's gloves, a cracked flashlight, a thermos still sealed shut. The remains were carefully extracted, wrapped, and transported under heavy guard. But what would come to haunt even the most seasoned members of the recovery team wasn't just what was found, it was what had been endured. Beside the skeletal remains lay a tattered cloth-bound journal, its pages stuck together with time and moisture. Yet many of the entries remained legible. It had been Sarah's. As investigators combed through its contents, they began to piece together a chilling but deeply human story. The first few pages described a detour from the main trail, after Sarah and Emily had decided to explore a quieter path through the trees. A sudden whiteout had descended, disorienting them. She wrote about trying to turn back, only to realize they had lost all sense of direction. With daylight fading and no signal on their phones, she made the decision to build a temporary shelter. The entries grew more frantic as the days passed. Supplies ran low. Sarah noted that Emily had injured her leg, likely a sprain or fracture after slipping on ice. She was unable to walk for long. With only limited food in their backpacks and freezing temperatures setting in, Sarah rationed everything. They melted snow to drink, used hand warmers sparingly, and tried to keep spirits high. One entry read, "Emily is scared. I keep telling her help is coming. I hope I'm right." The final entries were more heartbreaking. They detailed how Sarah had gone for help multiple times but had to return each time, unable to find a way out or signal anyone. Her last written words read simply, "I'm so sorry, baby. I tried." The journal, like everything else found at the site, was turned over to the family, though investigators made copies for their records. For those who had worked on the original search 7 years ago, the discovery was both devastating and oddly relieving. The mystery was over, but the truth was almost too much to bear. There had been a time, perhaps a window of a few days, when they could have been saved, if only the storm had cleared sooner or the search had looked just a little farther. But that chance had been lost. The mountain had held their story in silence for years. Now, it had given it back. And in doing so, it revealed not just a tragedy, but a testament to a mother's fierce, unwavering love and a child's innocent hope in the face of the unimaginable. The journal, worn and fragile, became the key to understanding the harrowing ordeal Sarah and Emily faced in those final days. As the family and investigators pored over the faded handwriting, the story unfolded with raw emotion and heartbreaking detail. Sarah had documented every moment with a mix of determination and fear, capturing the slow unraveling of their struggle against the merciless elements. Her words revealed a fierce resolve, a mother's unwavering love driving her to protect her daughter against all odds. She wrote about how they had tried to stay positive, making small games out of survival tasks, singing songs to keep Emily's spirits lifted even as the cold gnawed at their bodies. The entries described the worsening conditions, how nights became dangerously cold, the snow thickened, and the wind howled like a living thing outside their fragile shelter. Sarah detailed her attempts to signal rescuers with makeshift flags and by lighting small fires, hoping the smoke might be seen. She recounted moments of despair, exhaustion, and pain, both physical and emotional, but beneath it all was a constant thread of hope that someone would find them before it was too late. Emily's injuries worsened, and Sarah had to improvise splints and bandages with whatever materials they had. She wrote about the fear in Emily's eyes, how her daughter tried to be brave despite the pain. One entry stood out in particular, a letter Sarah wrote to Emily, imagining a future where they would be safe again. "If anyone finds this, please know how much I love you," she had written. "You are my light, my reason for fighting." The journal also revealed Sarah's attempts to ration their supplies carefully, the small meals made from dried fruit and energy bars, and how they collected water from melted snow. As time went on, the exhaustion took its toll. Sarah confessed to moments of weakness, but she always rallied for Emily's sake. Reading the journal was like stepping into their world, a place of quiet courage and heartbreaking desperation. It painted a picture not just of loss, but of a mother's fierce determination to protect her child against impossible odds. The journal's final pages stopped abruptly, leaving a chilling silence that echoed the end of their journey. For the family, the words brought both comfort and profound sorrow, offering a window into the strength and love that had defined Sarah's last days. The story of survival and sacrifice would forever be etched in their hearts, a testament to a bond that death could never break. The discovery of Sarah and Emily's remains finally brought a painful kind of closure to a mystery that had haunted their family and community for years. News of the find spread quickly, sparking an outpouring of sympathy and support from people around the world who had followed their story. For the Thompsons, it was a moment filled with unbearable grief but also relief that the unanswered questions, the endless waiting, and the haunting silence were at last confronted with truth. The mountain, which had seemed so merciless in its secrecy, had at last revealed what had happened in its hidden depths. Yet the truth was more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. The journal entries, the condition of the shelter, and the positioning of the remains all painted a vivid picture of a mother's desperate struggle to save her daughter in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a story of love, endurance, and ultimately sacrifice, one that deeply moved rescuers, investigators, and the public alike. People marveled at Sarah's courage and tenacity, understanding that the tragedy was not one of negligence or misfortune alone, but of a fierce determination to protect family at all costs. The community came together to honor Sarah and Emily with memorials at the ski resort and in their hometown. Stories were shared, candles lit, and a scholarship fund was established in Emily's name to support children's outdoor education and safety. The tragedy led to increased awareness about the dangers of backcountry skiing and the importance of preparedness and communication. New protocols and safety measures were implemented at Crystal Ridge to prevent such a loss from ever happening again. For the Thompsons, the closure did not erase the pain, but it allowed them to begin the slow process of healing. The unanswered questions that had haunted them for so long were replaced by memories and stories, a legacy of love rather than mystery. Though Sarah and Emily were gone, their story lived on as a powerful reminder of human resilience and the enduring bond between a mother and her child. In the end, the shocking discovery was not just an end but a beginning, a chance for the family and community to remember, to grieve, and to honor lives forever changed by the mountain's cold embrace.